queue backlog is a real struggle for the whole industry right now. There's a lot of different elements that go into it, site control being the biggest one, and landowners are on their own timeline. Setting some sort of internal timeline is extremely wise, and just being organized along the way. It sounds really simple, but is super important, just with all the site control engineering documents just being extremely organized, communicative across your team, right? Because it takes a team to do these things.
I love coming to the UNC Clean Tech Summit every year because I get a chance to see the students who have gone on from UNC to do great things, often with our local clean energy and economy here in Durham and the broader Durham, Raleigh, Chapel Hill area. I'm here live at the UNC Clean Tech Summit, the 10th anniversary, in fact, and our media zone is brought to you by FTC, Powen, and Imperial Star. I have a chance to sit with such an alum from UNC Chapel Hill. Georgia Morgan is a senior development associate at Strata Clean Energy, one of the larger developers in the United States. Morgan, it's great to see you.
Thank you so much for having me, Nico.
I'm grateful to have the opportunity. It's indicative of the work that you've done in the short couple of years that you've had a chance out of school to lean in at Strata, because Josh Rogel, the president, tapped you to come do the interview.
He did, yes.
Yeah, I was impressed with the conversation that we had, in particular, the depth and breadth of work that as an associate you've gotten involved in. So what are the typical activities as an associate developer that you find yourself doing day to day?
Yeah, that is an excellent question. So it really is different day to day, right? That's part of what I love about being a developer is every day looks a little different. I got my start largely in the greenfielding space. So early conception of project development, taking them from an idea to construction ready, right? And a lot of that has centered around first coming up with a market thesis. Why are we in these spaces? Why are we in this state? And just laying the groundwork, right? So some research is involved in that, which I was set up for well with my time at UNC. And then we really dive into some of the more specifics. So permitting, interconnection, where do we want our projects to be? And that largely has been what I've done in the past 2 years, is really diving into those details, looking into these specific areas, finding optimal opportunities for new projects, continuing to build the thesis around why these specific locations. Right. And that has really informed for me what development is and where we're looking to grow.
Yeah. What did mentorship look like for you over the past couple of years?
Yeah, I have been very fortunate to have excellent mentors. There's a lot of UNC alum at Strata. Cool. So that has been a great connection right off the bat, not only within development, but also across the organization. It's a very flat organization structure, so I get direct contact with really anyone in the org, and people have been very proactive in terms of reaching out to me and making sure I feel supported. So my direct manager has been excellent, and so have my development colleagues, and the leadership team has shown a lot of investment as well.
When you run into a problem early in your career, as you are, there's an expectation that you kind of have to figure it out. But the reality in the corporate world is that people really do want to help you.
Yeah.
Have you found a way to balance this desire to be self-sufficient with the corporate impetus, which is move faster, move faster?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, especially being new to an industry, you want to kind of prove yourself, right? You want to show that you can hold your own, that you can take initiative, but there's nothing that is more damaging to that than acting like and then messing something up, right? True. So I think a lot of respect and trust is gained by admitting when you don't know something and asking for help. That shows that you are trustworthy and that you can take on more responsibility, actually. So I think that really benefited me early on, just being transparent about knowing my skills and knowing where I could take initiative and continue to grow, and then just being honest about where I need help. And folks at Strata have been really receptive to that and happy to help at any time, which is part of why I've really enjoyed working here. So yeah, I think it's important to just be honest about your shortcomings and let your team fill in with their expertise.
Yeah, I want to ask about a few things that I know that you're involved in on a day-to-day basis. But I want to try to get a little bit more definition for folks who maybe are not directly involved in those areas. So
Yep.
let's talk about project due diligence. First of all, what does it look like in terms of generally, for those who are maybe on the finance, or excuse me, aren't on the finance side, they're on the frontline development side, or they're on the materials acquisition side. What does project due diligence involve? What does it mean?
The name of the game is de-risking the project, right?
Okay.
So identifying the fatal flaws. Are there wetlands in the area? Are there threatened and endangered species? An old cultural or historical site that we're unaware of?
Yeah.
What's the permitting outlook? It's really about identifying those early on and making them known, right? You don't want to paint your project as being perfect and then you invest more time and money and here you are with this fatal flaw that you haven't really touched because you thought it wouldn't be a big deal. If you have a question, always note it, always write it down. It's okay if you don't know the answer, but that's part of the due diligence and de-risking process, right?
Yeah.
You need to identify, every project is going to have those, right? And the due diligence is the process with which we evaluate those risks and see if they are fatal.
Yeah. And we often refer to the process of acquiring projects, which is where due diligence is most often applied in the business. We call it M&A, right? Mergers and acquisitions. We're not buying businesses, except that each project is its own special purpose entity.
Right.
It's technically, legally a business.
Right.
Can you talk about that, the journey of learning the M&A process and incorporating due diligence into that?
Yeah, so I was fortunate to be part of 2 different sale processes early in my career at Strata while I was simultaneously greenfielding in another market. And I'm really grateful for that experience because like you said, I got to hear some of the questions that buyers were asking, what they wanted to see in projects, which really helped inform how I develop early stage assets, right? So I'm extremely grateful for that experience. And during that time is when your due diligence is really out on the table to be scrutinized, right? Like what have you done? What haven't you done? Where are the gaps in that? And that's really when you know where your project stands. So I was involved in, like I said, two processes for very early stage projects. So only base level due diligence, environmental due diligence had been done.
Yeah.
But again, was just really informative to making sure I am crisp and clear in doing those things the first time so that we don't have to go back and do any sort of revisions or cleanup, right?
Yeah. Fascinating. So as an associate developer, one of the key roles that you play is the queue process, helping get the projects into the queue. That early entry application process can be tedious. What have you learned that is perhaps information you could help others overcome?
Yeah, queue backlog is a real struggle for the whole industry right now. There's a lot of different elements that go into it, site control being the biggest one, and landowners are on their own timeline, right? So I think setting some sort of internal timeline that precedes the actual deadline for whatever queue you're trying to enter is extremely wise, and just being organized along the way. It sounds really simple, but is super important. Just with all the site control engineering documents, just being extremely organized, communicative across your team, right? Because it takes a team to do these things, and trying not to come down to the wire like many of us did for exams at UNC. But yeah, it was a very, very humbling process. Got to be part of the last pre-reform queue and MISO in 2022, and now gearing up for the next one here in April. So had a nice lessons learned experience that I now get to apply to this next queue cycle.
Thankfully, as you have become a senior developer, you are not the person that's tasked with the frontline queue interconnection issues all the time.
Yes.
What are some of the roadblocks beyond the interconnection queue that you're now able to take on as challenges?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked. So interconnection, big one for sure. Next in line, I would say permitting, which I think every developer would say, but then also land.
Yeah.
Quality and prime location for interconnection. It's difficult to find the needle in the haystack that has all 3 of those at the same time, right?
What are the 3?
Interconnection, good permitting outlook or favorable permitting outlook, and then buildable, engineerable land.
Right. Okay.
That's all within the same geographic location.
Trifecta.
That's a trifecta, yeah. And it's really difficult, especially when you find a location that has two of those that are excellent and one that's terrible. That'll kill the project,
Yeah.
right? And a lot of developers are active in the same locations because we're all working within
Sure.
the same incentives, right? We're looking for those states with RPSs and markets that we can enter the queue, right? Like
Yeah.
PJM's on a pause. So we're all looking in the same areas and we're all using the same GIS tools. So we're all contacting the same landowners.
Yeah.
And that means that those landowners are just so fatigued, right? They're
Oh,
sick of
yeah.
hearing from all the developers, right? And
So how do you
so
stand out?
yeah, it's you really have to find your niche within that.
Right.
For Strata, we're a family-owned company, and folks really like to hear that, right?
Sure.
They're family-owned farms that
Yeah.
have farmed those properties for generations, and so that's a connection point, right?
Yep.
A lot of the large landowners that live near built-out infrastructure. They've already been approached, and if they're interested, they're already signed up for solar
Sure.
or wind projects, right? So it's about getting creative with, potentially smaller parcels and more landowners,
Yeah.
or just kind of expanding your radius in terms of how you're searching. And I'd say that's only been exacerbated with the IRA and energy community incentives. So it's really difficult and something that we're thinking a lot about at Strata and working really collaboratively within our land team. Like how can we be on like the cutting edge of what's next and not go for the low hanging fruit because it's already gone.
Fantastic. One of the other areas that I think that you all are doing something that is particularly useful, it's emblematic of how Marcus and the leadership at Strata think, and it's embedded even at the UNC Clean Tech Summit, is this concept around community engagement.
Yeah.
Not just being the neighbors, but the student community.
Yeah.
As an
Yeah.
alumni from UNC, you have been tapped internally with helping to find more students and integrate them. Now, I wanted to ask a specifically sort of a turn on this question. Not everyone has the privilege of being in Durham or Chapel Hill, where we have world-class institutions like UNC
Yeah.
and Duke and North Carolina State, and even in the state of North Carolina, access to Appalachian State, and students that really do have at the core their philosophy of environmental friendliness, renewable and applied technologies, et cetera. Is there something that you all are applying internally that you think is universally true about how to engage with higher education institutions and find students that you can integrate into internship programs or early career programs?
We are really fortunate to be near at least 3 really excellent universities. And I think even if you're a company that's not as well poised geographically speaking, there are bound to be technical universities or community colleges or other just higher level education programs in the area. And I think it's important to still provide some outreach to them, whether it's
Sure.
the educators or the students themselves. You mentioned internships. I think that's pretty standard, right? Just opening applications and doing a career fair. I think there's also a great opportunity to be creative with student engagement, getting them incentivized and excited to learn about the industry. So earlier this week, I helped run a renewable energy case competition with some students at UNC.
Oh, very cool.
It was really excellent with their environmental affairs department of their student government.
Okay.
And they approached me in the fall. I'm again grateful to have that connection as an alum, right? So that's already a leg up. But they came to me with this idea. We came up with a prompt together,
Sure.
And the students took on this role of being a municipal co-op, separating from a larger electricity supplier,
Oh, wow.
and wanting to integrate more renewables into their portfolio,
Yeah.
right? Very, very multifaceted, but real world applicable, and gave them the
Very
opportunity to really dive in and have like a holistic view of this industry, right? And again, this is just one example, but we solicited involvement across the state, not just UNC, but also the other universities in the area, reviewed their applications, and then had some Strata folks as judges on a panel this past week. And
How cool.
yeah, it was really exciting, and it was a great turnout. And
Was there a prize?
yeah, there was a prize. There was a cash prize, and then they were able to attend the Clean Tech Summit, and then
cool.
we gave some other folks some Strata swag for the
Nice.
runner-ups. But yeah, I mean, it was incredible to see them take this prompt and run with it, without any sort of unifying class or group. Like
Yeah,
they really took the initiative, did the research, and now have connections with a bunch of folks at Strata, right? And
amazing.
I think that creative ways for students to learn about the industry, talk to industry experts. That's how we get them in. That's how
Right.
we pull them in. And I think that you can do that really anywhere, right? You have to find the
Yeah.
institutions.
Several are probably watching because they're thinking, how do I even get a foot in the door in
Yeah,
the energy sector, in
right.
particular renewables? You've successfully done it. Any thoughts on early
hmm
stage steps to take to find a path into renewable companies like Strata?
My main guidance would just be that you don't have to follow a particular path,
Uh
right? You
huh.
don't have to be an engineer. You don't have to be an attorney. I studied public policy and urban planning,
Yeah.
tangentially related, but didn't ever study power markets or the renewable space specifically. So I would just encourage folks to follow what interests that they have. And if that does lead them still within the renewable energy sector, to just ask questions, have
Yeah.
informational interviews with folks. Development itself is very interdisciplinary,
Right.
right? You're interfacing with a lot of different subject matter experts and helping all those things come together to build these projects.
Yep.
The soft skills that you learn at university are extremely
Yeah.
important. Just managing your time, managing multiple projects at once, clear and efficient communication amongst groups that don't usually communicate.
Learning
Those
to say
are
no to
important
things.
skills. Yeah, exactly. Those are important skills, and these projects wouldn't happen without them. So there's niches in all facets of the industry. So I would just encourage people to continue with their interests and talk to people and find those niches.
Yeah, and I would say, as you've heard, there are internships that abound, and there are lots of opportunities to offer up your expertise. I find most students don't realize how accessible folks are
Yeah.
in the corporate world
hmm
and how receptive they are to a student simply reaching out and saying, "Hey,
Yeah.
I noticed you are working in this area. Would it be okay if I did X, Y, Z
hmm
research, or, I've gone and done this modeling,
Yeah.
and I would love if someone on your team would vet it for me. And
Right.
like, is this helpful? Am I
hmm
headed in the right direction?"
Absolutely.
Professionals love that kind of initiative. And I
hmm
think that is the underlying word, is what the renewable energy sector and the energy sector particularly are looking for, is not more engineers, but more students and young professionals with initiative.
Yes. And just a willingness to learn, right?
Yeah,
Like if you ask good questions and going back to what we said earlier, just admitting when you don't know
yes,
something, people love that. Like
so
they
true.
they love to work with people who are eager to learn, teachable, ask good questions, and that will just set you up for a world of success.
So true. Well, it is wonderful to have a chance to sit down with you, Georgia, and learn more
Likewise.
about the journey that you've had over the last couple of years and your ascension now as senior associate
Thank you.
developer
I appreciate
at
it.
Strata Clean Energy. Thank you for tuning in as well. If folks wanted to connect with you, is there a great way for them to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm active on LinkedIn,
Yep.
Georgia Morgan. Otherwise, my email is also georgia.morgan@Strata Clean Energy.
Yeah, fantastic.
Awesome.
Well, thank you for tuning in as well, joining us here at the Suncast Media Zone. Thanks to our sponsors, FTC Solar, Powen, and Imperial Star, for helping the Media Zone come to life. We'll see you again in the next interview.